like I said earlier, tonight I wanted to talk about open scoring. So mostly it's been happening in Kansas with the Kansas Athletic Commission, and it's mostly been Invicta FC, which works. I do remember one or two events held by LFA that did it under open scoring the same way, and a lot of people seem to like open scoring. I'm going to present some arguments tonight, though, against it. And like I said at the start of the show, if you disagree, feel free to mention it in the chat. If you're watching this on playback, please, excuse me. If you're watching it on playback, feel free to bring up your points in the comments. Now, I do got to give a shout out to Brian Campbell of the Morning Combat Show. He gave me the inspiration for this and one of the ideas. But I've got three main arguments against open scoring. And I think I can convince some people. Okay, first off, and this to me is probably the most important. A lot of people think that open scoring and allowing the fighters to know what's going on in the fight is going to allow them to help the fighters to work around bad judging. I disagree, because at the end of the day, it's not fixing bad judging. Open scoring just basically takes bad judging and sweeps it under the rug a little bit and go, but look at what we got here. Woo! It's like, I don't have my keys in front of me, but it's like dangling dad's keys in front of a baby, or dangling a toy on a string in front of a cat. It's just a distraction. Or as magicians like to call it, misdirection. Because with the hand, you're watching the hand over here, but you're not seeing what the hand down here is doing. Open scoring basically just allows commissions to not do anything about undereducated judges, underqualified judges, and just judges who simply don't know what the F they're watching. It just does not fix bad judging. And honestly, I have yet to see evidence to show that it helps fighters to fight better in spite of the bad judging, because a fighter's going to see scorecards are going the wrong way, but they might not be able to do anything. Okay? So that moves me on. So argument number one is that it doesn't fix bad judging. And that at the end of the day, I think that should be the most important, because it's not solving the problem. But piggybacking off of what I just said, number two is the myth of the last round comeback. Now, do last round comebacks happen in fights? Yes, but they are rare. They are very rare. And this whole myth springs up around the fact that, well, if a fighter sees that they're down 2-0 in the third round, or 3-1 in the fifth round, they'll fight harder for a finish. The numbers, however, just do not reflect that. So the idea that open scoring is going to allow fighters to fight harder for a comeback and go for the finish in the third round, it's largely been busted. Okay, so here's my numbers here. Since the Phoenix Series 3 back on March 6th of 2020, Invicta FC has held 10 events across with 48 bouts. Now, I'm not including the single round Phoenix tournament bouts. But since the first event to feature open scoring, the Phoenix Series 3, the bantamweights, back on March 6th of 2020, Invicta has held 40 fights. Invicta has held 48 bouts across 10 events. You know how many third round comeback finishes there have been? 1. 47 non-comebacks to 1. And it was at the very most recent Invicta event. Let me see the fight, find the fight here. Milana Dudieva got knocked out. I know that much. No. That's the next one. So it was at Invicta 46, Rodriguez versus Torquato 2, back on March 9th. And Denise Gomez defeated Milana Dudieva via TKO at 1 minute and 56 seconds of the third round. Gomez was well behind on the scorecards. Here's the thing, though. It's not so much that Gomez fought that much harder in the third round. I mean, she did. I'm not going to take away credit from her. She did fight that hard. But Dudieva was like exhausted by the third round. So it's not so much what Gomez did, is just how bad Dudieva looked after 2 rounds. But the main point here is that 48 bouts in 2 years, you only have 1 third round comeback. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that love stats that are going to argue, well, that's not a big enough sample size. But still, you'd think there would be more than that by now, because that's one of the biggest proponents. That's one of the biggest ideas that proponents of open scoring go for, is like, well, shoot, it'll allow fighters who are down to fight that much harder in the final round to get a finish. It's not showing it. The numbers just do not reflect that right now. So the myth of the last round comeback basically busted. Now, the third and final argument that I'm going to convey to you against open scoring is going to be the fan experience. Open scoring robs the fans of one of the best experiences that you can get in MMA. You've got to fight, whether it was a 3-round war, a 5-round war, doesn't matter. The fight has been an absolute war, and it is close. It could go either way, and neither fighter necessarily knows. Both fighters think they won, and you're waiting, and you hear the judges scorecards get read off and announce the winner. And if it's the fighter you like won, you're jumping out of your seat. You're cheering. You're like, yeah, I told you, yeah, that's it, right. Or if the fighter you were cheering for lost, it's heartbreak. But either way, I mean, it is some of the worst heartbreak too, because you're watching a fighter that you like, that you cheer for, just fight their ass off. I mean, just fight 3 rounds, 5 rounds, absolutely fight their butt off, and then they just lose, and you're heartbroken. But either way, whether you're elated or you're disappointed, it's an emotional experience like very few others that you're going to get in this sport. And open scoring robs you of that. Because in open scoring, you go into the final round, if it's 2 rounds to none, or 3 rounds to one, or 4 rounds to none, it goes to the decision. You already know who won. So you basically get robbed of a potentially exciting final round, but you definitely get robbed of that experience of what happens when that scorecard gets read, that decision. And it's either the highest of highs or just extreme disappointment. And you're getting robbed of that with open scoring. Not only that, the fighters get robbed of that too. So, like, if a fighter, let's say a fighter is fighting for a championship for the first time, and they fought a hard fight, and they're waiting for the scorecards to be read, and then they hear their name as the winner. That is the biggest feeling that that fighter will ever get to experience, because they get their name announced. They didn't know, they weren't sure, and then they get their name announced, and they're like, yeah, yeah, they won, they won, and they're so excited. And as a fan, as a fighter, that's got to be the greatest feeling. I can only imagine. But as a fan, to watch that happen to a fighter, that is like one of the greatest feelings you can get watching this sport. But with open scoring, you get robbed of that. It takes it away. By the end of the fight, you already know who won. You, I mean, you already know who won. So by then, the reading off of the winner basically just becomes, they're just going through the motions at that point. So the open scoring for me, the biggest reason I would say would be that it doesn't fix bad judging. I think that's the most important thing. But as a fan, as a member of the audience, that emotional experience, that audience experience, whether you're watching it at home on TV or you're watching it live, and I swear, you get a chance to go watch an MMA event live, you have to do it at least once, especially in person. Though that feeling you get from the mystery, that excitement, that tension, and then that release, that tension releases. That feeling is like second to none. I mean, it's probably more exciting than watching a big knockout or a big submission because of that tension build up, and then poof, it explodes out. Open scoring robs you of that. So those are my three arguments against open scoring. And I picked Invicta and Kansas, like I said, in the picture, because those are the three biggest proponents of open scoring. But those are my thoughts. I mean, there's a couple people watching in the chat. Let me know if you agree or disagree. And of course, if you're watching on the playback, let me know your thoughts in the comments. But those are my arguments against open scoring. I think they're pretty good ones, especially as a fight fan. Like, I'm a fan first and foremost. Like, I'm a broadcaster by hobby. This is my hobby. But before, above all else, I'm a fan first. And those experiences as a fan watching the sport, those are number one. So let me know your thoughts. But